Sometimes the message isn't hard to answer. What's hard is everything you think will happen after you answer it. You see the notification. You read the message. You think, I'll reply later. Then an hour passes, then a day, eventually. The message becomes strangely harder to answer than it was when you first saw it. And that's where this gets interesting. At first, it feels harmless. Maybe you're busy. Maybe you're tired. Maybe you simply don't know what to say. So, you put the phone down. But later, when you see the message again, something has changed. Now you're not just replying to a message. You're replying after ignoring it. And suddenly, the simple, hey, sorry in your head starts sounding like it needs an explanation. This is where avoidance can take over. When something feels uncomfortable, delaying it can give you immediate relief. You don't have to deal with the conversation right now. You don't have to choose the right words. You don't have to face whatever emotion comes with replying. For a moment, doing nothing feels easier. The problem is that the relief doesn't actually solve the situation. It just moves the discomfort into the future. And there can be another layer. Sometimes people don't stop replying because they don't care. They stop because they care too much about how the interaction might go. Maybe the conversation has become emotionally complicated. Maybe they don't know what the other person expects. Maybe they're afraid that one simple reply will reopen a conversation they've been trying to avoid, so instead of choosing between an uncomfortable answer and an uncomfortable conversation, they choose silence. Not necessarily because silence is better, because silence feels easier right now. And this is important because we often interpret silence from the outside. You think, they don't care. Or, I must have said something wrong. Or maybe, they're deliberately ignoring me. Sometimes those things may be true. But sometimes you are. Looking at the behavior without seeing the emotion underneath it. Two people can perform exactly the same behavior for completely different reasons. One person may be uninterested. Another may be overwhelmed. Another may not know how to respond. Another may simply have forgotten. The behavior looks identical from your side. The reason doesn't. But there's something else that happens when you are the person waiting. Your brain hates incomplete social situations. You don't know what the silence means. So your mind starts filling in the missing information. You replay the last conversation. You inspect your wording. You notice that they were online. You see them posting something, and suddenly, a missing reply becomes a story. They're avoiding me. They're mad. They don't like me anymore. Maybe, but you don't actually know. And uncertainty gives your imagination a lot of room to work. Here's the twist. The person who isn't replying and the person waiting for the reply can both be uncomfortable. One person is avoiding the discomfort of responding. The other is trying to reduce the discomfort of not knowing. They're dealing with the same uncertainty in completely different ways. One moves away from it. The other moves toward it. And that's why texting can become emotionally complicated without either person planning for it. So if you've ever been the person who suddenly stops replying, there's a useful question to ask. Not, why am I such a bad person? And not, why can't I just answer? Ask something more specific. What am I avoiding by not replying? Is it a difficult conversation? A possible expectation? The fear of disappointing someone? The pressure to explain yourself? Or maybe you simply don't have the emotional energy for the interaction right now. Once you identify what you're avoiding, the silence becomes easier to understand. And if you're the person waiting for a reply, there's a different question. Instead of immediately asking, what did I do wrong? Ask, what do I actually know? You know they haven't replied. That's it. Everything else may be an interpretation. That doesn't mean you should ignore patterns of disrespect or keep chasing someone who consistently gives you nothing back. It simply means you don't have to turn one unanswered message into a complete story about your worth. Because sometimes the silence really does mean the relationship has changed. And sometimes it means the person is overwhelmed, distracted, uncomfortable. or simply terrible at communicating. You may never know which one it is unless they tell you. That's the uncomfortable truth about human behavior. We often want certainty from other people's actions when their actions simply don't contain enough information. So the healthiest response isn't to invent an explanation. It's to notice the behavior, respect your own boundaries, and let the other person be responsible for explaining themselves if they choose to. And maybe that's the part we forget. A message is only a few words on a screen, but behind that little notification are two human beings, each carrying their own emotions, fears, expectations, habits, and ways of dealing with discomfort. So the next time someone suddenly stops replying, don't automatically assume you know what their silence means. And if you're the one avoiding the reply, be honest with yourself about what you're actually avoiding. Because sometimes the hardest message to answer isn't the one on your screen. It's the one you keep avoiding inside your own head.